land of ours and fill a sportsman's dreams. Enjoy what nature holds for us, her bounty never ends. Getting back to basics with the practical sportsman. It's always an adventure, no matter where we go. From a favorite hunting spot to the hottest fishing hole. Outdoor life we all can share with family and friends. We'll do it all together with a practical sportsman. We'll do it all together with a practical sportsman.
Hello, sportsmen. Hey, we're just a little bit more than a week ahead of Michigan's Firearm Deer Opener, which is the biggest hunting event of the year for hundreds of thousands of hunters. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to introduce some important subjects, such as the controversy surrounding TB in deer. We'll hear the first installment in a series from a conservation officer who's had 25 years on the force, plus some practical tips. So you stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost, getting ready for Deer Hunting 1998.
I'm going to give 3 to 5 short grunts that sound like this.
That's a real interesting thing. They had a very, very big kill in the opening week of archery season up in the area in 452, where the TB is concentrated. It's probably a little better than the DNR had expected. The question now is, after these guys go up, or hunters go up and kill a doe, kill an antlerless deer, how many of them are going to want to kill a second one? And I think in order to bring the herd down to the target numbers they've got, they're going to have to do that. So I don't think that's going to happen. And the other question is, the DNR tells me you've got more hunters coming in there to kill more deer. At the same time, you talk to motel owners, and a guy like Nettie Bay Lodge, I don't know if you know Mark Schiller up there, he's got phenomenal deer hunting opportunities up there. He's got people, 2 groups canceled for Thanksgiving weekend. He's got, and his prime, which should be prime deer, he should be packed. He's got openings like crazy up there. So that tells me that the hunters are not coming into the numbers that they expect. Maybe in some areas they are, and again, they've done nothing to give people more access to those deer. The DNR says, well, we're going to hand out the permits, and it's up to the landowners to decide how to use those permits, and it's up to them to let people on. This is not the landowner's TB problem. This is the state of Michigan DNR's TB problem, and they'd better figure that out.
Or is it the Department of Agriculture's TB problem?
Well, it's everybody's TB problem, but the problem now is it's in the deer. Now, where did it come from? I am just convinced originally that came out of the cattle, because Michigan, you know as well as I do, till the 60s, had the highest bovine TB rate in cattle in the United States. So that well of TB, bovine TB, has been simmering back there for decades, and now for some reason it's just reached a critical level. It's almost like a reactor. It gets to critical mass and takes off. So it is the agriculture department's problem, but it's also our problem in TB. Because if this gets out of that area, if they start finding TB-infected deer in the rest of the state, there's no way it means it's out of control. It means and it probably means it's beyond control. All you can do is hope to limit it.
What have you heard about the chances of a person getting TB from either dressing out a deer or eating the meat?
Yeah, I looked real hard into that. There is no record of anyone in this country, and the reason they say this country is because it's a place to keep records, or in Europe, of anyone getting TB from eating meat from cattle or deer. Nobody knows about deer, but especially from cattle. And at once, as I say, this was in the 60s, was very, very common in cattle. Now, and people did not get it from eating cattle meat then. Where they got it from was drinking milk, which is why we pasteurize milk today. And now we're starting to pasteurize cider and things, not for TB, but just recognizing that unpasteurized liquids like this can cause, a lot of problems. Now, there's still bovine TB in people, but the people who get bovine TB, and it's not uncommon, the people who get bovine TB are people who work mostly with dairy cattle. And they're in there every day with the cows snorting and spitting on them. And some of the farm families will still drink unpasteurized milk. And that'll happen. So if you're going to eat the lungs, the raw lungs and vitals of a deer, you may get TB. I would not recommend it. I haven't done it. But I don't think there's any danger from it.
Eric Sharp is the outdoor editor of the Detroit Free Press, and he has a background and a very keen interest in environmental reporting, and he's done considerable research on the TB problem. Now, speaking of bovine TB research, there's a group of citizens in the northeast corner of the Lower Peninsula led by a guy named Bill Bice, who may end up taking the DNR to court over a research project report that relates to the recent ban on feeding deer in the winter in Area 452.
This whole thing started with, in 94 and 95, with the Farm Bureau threatening to sue the Department of Natural Resources if they didn't get their deer numbers down to a comfortable number as far as the Ag Department goes, or the Farm Bureau goes. And of course, then the TB came along in 95. Since then, we haven't heard any rumbling about lawsuits. Now, they're tightly connected. I'm sure Farm Bureau, I'm sure Ag Department is happy the way things are going right now, this mass slaughter that's going on. We're not denying that there's not too many deer in small pockets, in certain areas. There are too many deer. They need to shoot does, but they need to handle it through the doe permit system, which this last weekend, the first weekend of this extra rifle season, proved it can be done. I mean, it's unbelievable how many does were shot up in this area. The private owner said they weren't going to participate, but yet they did, or a lot of them did. Our argument is that it can be handled through doe permits rather than starving what's left. The deer that survive the gauntlet of the 3 seasons, the 3 rifle seasons, turn around and face starvation this winter. Ag Department knows that. Department of Natural Resources know that. We're going to lose astronomical amounts of deer. Over the past 30 years, we've fed the deer. I don't do it to hunt them in these locations. We feed them because we want to feed them. We watch deer starve. We didn't want them to starve. We legally fed the deer. We do it in a way where we spread the feed out where you don't get as much nose-to-nose contact. Recently, and an ongoing study, the Department of Natural Resources and Ag joint venture of a study paid for by these 2 organizations proved that they can be fed with almost 0 down to 1% nose-to-nose contact. And, you know, this is what we want to do. We want to be able to keep the constitutional right to feed the animals in the wintertime. This report that we received was very detailed. It was 51 pages long, the initial report. We received it, looked it over, and we're real happy with what we saw in it. We had a hard time getting it because certain people said it didn't exist. Even some of the people that were involved had a hard time getting a copy. Well, when we finally got a copy, then we knew there was a copy that existed, so we went about trying to get our own copy. Well, 3, 4, 5 weeks later, we received a copy, a chopped down, edited copy. I mean, seriously edited. There was 51 pages in the initial report. The report that we received had 33 pages. Everything that was positive about alternative methods of feeding deer to avoid nose-to-nose contact was gone. They took paragraphs out of the middle of pages. They took sentences, changed sentences, and then simply removed full pages to the tune of, I forget what it was, 11, something like that.
How did you get that copy?
That was right from the Michigan State University through the Extension Service. Our first attempt to get a copy from the Extension Service, 2 Extension Services, was there was no such a study. We don't have a copy. Well then, Tom, our spokesman, took his copy and showed it to one of the extension agents. And they looked at it and think, you know, why don't we have a copy? So they went on to try to get themselves a copy. And they were pleased to call us and say, we got it, we got the copy. And then when we went and got it, it was absolutely, it almost nauseated me to think that these people would go to this measure to cover up the fact that there is a way to feed the deer without the nose-to-nose contact.
Now, who are these people?
Well, Michigan State University did the study for the Ag Department and the Department of Natural Resources. We don't know who altered the report. And key people in the organization say they don't know either. We know where it came from. We've got the facts cover sheet. So we don't know. We can't pin it on any one person, but certainly somebody altered the report.
Now, why?
This is paid for by public money.
Now, and why is this report so important to you?
Because it's our proof that we can feed the deer without nose-to-nose contact. Obviously, they don't want the public to know that they have proven that you can feed the deer without nose-to-nose contact.
I have copies of both of these research reports. The 51-pager, that's the original, and the 33-pager, the edited copy that has been released to the public. Now, both of these reports are posted on our website, along with a page that describes what is missing from the edited report. Also, the transcript from the hour-and-a-half interview I did with Bill Bice and two of his supporters up in Lincoln has also been posted to the website. Now, this Saturday morning at our Deer Hunters Workshop at Annie Ray RV in DeWitt, I will play an hour's worth of video interviews with 5 people on bovine TB and deer. That'll go from 9 to 10 in the morning, followed at 10 by Fred and Greg Abbas, teaching how to call, rattle, and grunt in deer. They'll teach you things like, does whistling work when you want to call in a deer?
I hear guys say they whistle, but when you whistle, it's an unnatural sound that gives away your position. When you grunt, they go, "Where's that deer?" And they'll be a little more relaxed.
So I'm hunting in a stand, and I haven't seen any deer all day, okay? I've given a few grunt calls. I think I'm doing it the right way. And all of a sudden, I see a deer running across the field into the woods where I'm at. Now, how do I grunt? How do I take it from there?
Well, what I would do is one grunt sequence at this point. Sounds like this. And get louder gradually until you get his attention. Once a mirror's focus in on your stand, don't grunt anymore. He's acknowledged you and he's telling you, "I'll be there in a minute." Now his minute may take an hour, but he's acknowledged you. Once he starts coming in, let him come. I wouldn't grunt anymore unless he's gonna deviate off course and possibly not give you that shot. Once he starts to deviate a little bit or look the other way, I may grunt again to reinforce it that this deer is still here. But if you don't need to call, don't call, because you can't carry on a conversation with the deer.
Is there some blind setups that lend themselves more to effective grunt calling?
I'd say more of the blinds that you make by hand with logs and brush, it's natural. Hunting out of a blind, so to speak, a man-made blind, the deer knows that's not natural, and you'll be able to call him in somewhat, but he's not going to want to walk through you. He knows that's a man-made obstacle. Your ground blinds that you make by hand, it looks natural, and he's going to want to walk through you. You could end up with a very close shot that way.
In many types of training, you can reprimand the dog, tell him, no, don't do that, sit down, lay down, whatever you want, and the dog knows they did something wrong. But it seems like with this blood trailing, you want them to do something that you really have no way to say no. Or do you? I mean, I don't understand how that would...
Yes, you can correct them. You do correct them when they're wrong. They learn, as I mentioned before, on the treat, that's what they're doing this for. The praise, the treating, because there is no reward for them in this blood trailing. You are making this dog do something that he'd rather not be doing. But if done properly and he learns that the reward is at the end, he finds this, he gets a big enough reward, then he'll follow through for you. Also, you want a dog that's eager to please.
Is this what the cops do with their bloodhounds? Because they certainly don't let the bloodhound eat the criminal when they find him. I mean, do they use those treats? Is that something we haven't known about?
That I don't know. I would imagine some dogs get treats. Some dogs have their toys and stuff. I know on the drug sniffing dogs, they'll have a towel or rag or something that is that dog's toy, and when he finds it, then he gets to play, he gets his toy. So again, he's got his reward, and you want to make sure that the dog is rewarded for what he does.
Well, where did you learn this business about blood trailing?
I learned it through the NADKC, it's the North American Deutsche Kushhör Club, affiliated with the club in Germany. So we are doing the same tests here on our German-bred German Shorthairs that the Germans are doing in Germany. And that's where the training that I got has come down through there. And I was just recently at a seminar where this was a part of that. And the person that was giving the seminar came over from Germany, and we had a translator for this. So I got it straight from Germany, where it has been legal to do this, and they've been doing it all along with blood trailing the deer.
In many other countries and in many other states, blood trailing deer with dogs has been legal for many years. And some of our southern states, in fact, you can actually hunt deer with dogs. Now that, hunting deer with dogs, is not legal in Michigan. You can only use a dog to locate a downed deer. Now, 2 weeks ago, I explained how the DNR makes hunting regulations. The transcript of that story is on our website, along with the responses we got to our opinion survey question that asked, should the DNR be required to hold formal public hearings and spend 6 to 8 months discussing its proposed rules for fishing or hunting? Or should the DNR be allowed to continue issuing orders on a 30-day notice? The responses were short and to the point, came out this way. 86% said the legislature should change the system so that the DNR makes rules for hunting and fishing. Only 12% said the DNR should be allowed to issue orders on a 30-day notice. 2% didn't like either option. Now, I recently interviewed a person who had not seen my TV reports on rules versus orders, but he has a keen interest in the subject. He's Conservation Officer Mike Hansen from Tuscola County. He recently retired after 25 years as a CO. You'll be hearing parts of this interview with Officer Hansen in a number of upcoming shows, but here is a few minutes of the part of the interview where I asked, do conservation officers have as much trouble figuring out what the laws mean as sportsmen do?
It would not be uncommon at a meeting to look at the new regulations, and we would all sit down and read them and say, does this really mean this? And ask for clarification, because frequently they were not properly written and there would be errors. And we were not allowed to even read the hunting digest or proofread them in any but maybe a handful of years to see if they were accurately reflecting the statute. So you have another confusing layer to hit the sportsman with. The statute may say one thing, the digest has gotten larger and says more things, and some of them are not based on reality or statute, whichever you want to call it. So yeah, it's confusing. I'm not sure that it's necessary. I've looked at, you can go out to North Dakota or some of the other states. They have relatively simple 2 or 3 or 4 page digests that seem to be readable and to the point. I'm not sure how they got that complicated, but they don't serve anyone well. The officers have to make a lot more judgment calls, and the more of those calls that you make, the more chance you have of being wrong. And if they're that confusing to the officer, where they are actually making wrong calls because they don't interpret it correctly, I can imagine the sportsman who barely reads them being able to figure them out. They're not going to go through 27 pages of rules to figure out what the hunting regulations are. They just don't do it.
And trying to remember those rules.
Well, I'm sorry, they don't even read them.
Well,
let alone
if you
remember.
Do hear about them, you can get them mixed up in your mind.
Absolutely.
About I find sportsmen are getting confused, especially when regulations are reversed or they're changed. That was legal last year. It's not legal this year. That wasn't legal last year, but it's legal this year.
Correct.
It starts getting confusing as you stack up the years and you're trying to keep track of what are the rules this year.
Correct. And it's difficult.
It seems this year seems worse than ever for sportsmen trying to figure out and arguing over. We had a big discussion goose season. Remember about shooting hours that come to an end here in 2 minutes. No, I think that's a half hour from now. No, I think it's at sunset. No, I think they changed that. Nelson says, no, they didn't change that. They changed something else. Well, we better stop, because none of us who have been hunting all of our lives could agree as to what the rule was this year, whether it had been reversed or not.
Well, I could tell when the digest came out, the amount of phone calls that would hit my house. My wife would listen in when she was allowed to be a volunteer conservation officer, and she could answer those questions, all right, because she heard them so many times. And, I made the effort to answer and return those calls in the evening. And the area is rural enough that people did not take advantage of that fact. I can imagine in a large city, you would do nothing but answer those calls, and that would be your only work. because the confusion is so large. And, you know, it's not serving the public well. And I don't know who is to blame, but we do need to look at the issue that these regulations are far too complicated to solve any of the problems they're attempting to solve, because people just say, yeah, okay, maybe I'll just go out and do it. Or some of them are so intimidated they won't hunt or fish. I mean, they just won't do it. They said, I don't know if I'm doing it right or wrong. I'm not going to do it. They're paralyzed. And I could understand that.
Officer Hansen is right. In the past 8 years, hunting and fishing license sales have been declining in Michigan. Now, waterfowl hunting has been the worst. At least a fair part of that decline is due to hunters not understanding and not trusting the rules. This week, get out your scarf and mittens and get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. See you next week. 1st of November.
Yep,
It's a good time to be bow hunting.
you bet.
Alan Kroll from Sand Lake got this buck, Lenawee County. Lenawee, the big producer of bucks this year. And you got this, of course, with your dart and bow, 14-pointer, 19-inch spread.
Yep.
Pretty exciting morning for, no, not morning, noon,
Yep.
1 o'clock.
I have a theory, 10 to 2 I call it. And we're out hunting behind my mom and dad's place, and this guy followed up a doe right out to my bait pile and let him have it.
But you were hunting in a tree stand
Yes.
with bait, and you use the bait to draw the does. Or do you take does?
No, I haven't shot any does yet. This is my first deer with a bow.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How many years you been hunting?
2 years. Last year I missed a nice 8-point right out of the same spot, but it was a ground blind.
Huh.
So I built a tree stand this year, and this guy came out.
Hey, you got a great start on bow hunting. Alan Kroll from Sand Creek, congratulations.
Thank you.
Jeez.